Just another important thing, well, perhaps not so important actually, but interesting. It seems that Johanna, the daughter of Anne of Kerioth, the would have been fiancée of Judas Iscariot, who died of grief, actually went to heaven about 3 days before the crucifixion. This is a special gift of Jesus, in the manner that the thief on the cross was to be that day with Jesus in paradise. Or that Elijah was taken up, or Enoch was taken up in the Old Testament. Because Jesus says to Anne of Kerioth, when she's not there with Mary of Simon, because Jesus does not want to contrast the great situation, the great circumstance of Johanna with that wretched situation of Judas in hell. He says, for 15 days she has been rejoicing in heaven. And since it's the 12th day after the crucifixion, she must have ascended to heaven 3 days before the crucifixion. So she would have left the limbo of the fathers, where everybody is, who is awaiting the opening of those gates to ascend into heaven. And the opening of those gates happens with the sacrifice of Jesus and his resurrection. We have a pretty explicit rejection of abortion by Jesus. When Mary of Simon is in her distraught state, and she says, if I'd known what Judas was going to become, I would have torn my womb to prevent him being born. And Jesus says, no, that would be unjust. Don't sacrifice your justice. What a son does is not the responsibility of the mother. You did your duty by bringing him into the world, raising him. What he then does is not your fault in any respect. So we can imagine the mothers of, say, Stalin or Mao or Hitler. They would not be permitted to kill their child in the womb, even if that child was going on to do the horrible things they did. And if that's true of the most criticised people in the world, then there can be no child for whom an abortion can be a proper treatment, proper action. Abortion is therefore forbidden by Jesus in this passage. Something else is worth noting. I remarked in a previous video about Mary of Simon that we don't know how long she lives after the death of Christ and the death of Judas. But here we get an indication, because in her despair, Mary of Simon says, "Make me die if you love me." Jesus says, "A little longer. Your son was not able to give me anything. Give me a period of time of your suffering. It will be a short one." So there, looks like Judas's mother will only have to live on the earth a few more years. The only other indication of any time period is when Anne of Kerioth is speaking separately to Jesus. When she says of the suffering of Mary of Simon, "I think she will die of it." Jesus responds, "No, not soon." So that suggests to me that this particular illness that Mary of Simon had suffered because of hearing that Judas had been the betrayer of Jesus, and of which Jesus cures her, but at this stage Anne of Kerioth isn't aware of the cure. That's not going to kill her, because she's going to be cured of it, but there's an underlying grief nonetheless. And that might be the thing which takes her away. Even though she's physically cured, she is heartbroken. And so maybe that's why Jesus says, in response to Anne of Kerioth saying, I think she will die of it, he says no. But then he says, not soon. So, all in all, it points to me, the little bit of information we have here, that Mary of Simon, Judas's mother, will have no more than, say, 5 years to live after this conversation took place.